the Cave of Wonders, where dreams and destiny intertwine. The Keeper of Tales. Gentle souls seeking refuge in the night's embrace, gather close as I, the Keeper of Tales, unveil a story that has been guarded for 1,000 years. I speak to you from the depths of time itself, where magic still whispers in the shadows and dreams take flight on wings of starlight. Tonight's tale is unlike any other, a story of destiny so powerful it has traversed centuries, waiting for the perfect moment to be shared. As you listen, you'll find yourself transported to a world where the impossible becomes reality, where every grain of sand holds a secret, and where the night sky itself bends to listen to our tale. Let your breathing slow, dear friends, as I weave for you the true story of the Cave of Wonders, of young Aladdin, and of a destiny that would shake the very foundations of reality itself. The Diamond Among Stones. The morning sun crept over the ancient walls of Agrabah like liquid gold, painting the city in hues that would make even the richest merchant weep with envy. In these early hours, before the bustle of daily life consumed the streets, a young man named Aladdin stood atop his modest dwelling, a converted tower room that most would consider little more than a glorified ruin. "Abu, my friend," he whispered to his faithful companion, a clever monkey with eyes that sparkled with mischief, "shall we see what adventures await us today?" The monkey chittered in response, adjusting the small vest that Aladdin had crafted for him from discarded silk. From his perch, Aladdin could see the entire cityscape unfold before him like a living tapestry. The grand palace rose in the distance, its alabaster walls and golden domes catching the morning light like a beacon of dreams. Closer at hand, the marketplace began to stir, merchants rolling out carpets and arranging their wares with the precision of artists preparing a masterpiece. Yet beneath this beauty lay a city of stark contrasts. In the shadows of those gleaming minarets, poverty crept like a silent predator. Aladdin knew these shadows intimately. They had been his teachers, his shelter, and sometimes his salvation. His own story began in these very streets, abandoned as a child, surviving by his wits and the kindness of strangers who had little themselves but shared what they could. As he descended to the streets below, the familiar sounds and sense of morning enveloped him. The bakers' ovens were already hot, sending aromatic promises of fresh bread through the air. The water carriers began their rounds, their melodic calls mixing with the first prayers of the day echoing from the mosque. "Good morning, young Aladdin," called Fatima, the elderly bread seller. Her weathered face creased with genuine warmth as she held out a still warm loaf. "Your mother would be proud to see the man you've become." Aladdin's heart tightened at the mention of his mother. Though years had passed since her death, the pain remained fresh. "Thank you, Fatima," he smiled, accepting the bread and breaking off a piece for Abu. "Your kindness reminds me of her." The morning unfolded like a familiar dance. Aladdin moved through the awakening marketplace, helping where he could. He lifted heavy water jugs for struggling vendors, retrieved scattered oranges for a frustrated fruit seller, and even managed to prevent a costly accident when a merchant's cartwheel caught in a rut. "A golden heart in a pauper's chest," observed Hassan, the spice merchant, watching Aladdin assist a blind woman across the crowded street. "Though marks my words, boy, destiny has its eye on you." I've seen it in my dreams. Hassan was known for his mysterious pronouncements, and normally Aladdin would have laughed them off. But lately, strange dreams had been haunting his nights, visions of vast caverns filled with unimaginable treasures, of shadows that moved with purpose, and of a voice that called to him from the depths of the desert itself. As the sun climbed higher, the marketplace swelled with life. Merchants haggled with customers, children darted between stalls playing elaborate games of chase, and the air filled with a cacophony of voices in a dozen different languages. Aladdin watched it all from his favorite perch atop a merchant's awning, sharing dates with Abu and dreaming of a life beyond these familiar streets. Little did he know that at that very moment, destiny was indeed approaching, in the form of a dark-robed figure moving through the crowds like a shadow among shadows, eyes scanning the faces of the crowd with ancient purpose. The sorcerer's shadow. The midday sun had reached its zenith when Aladdin first sensed something amiss in his beloved marketplace. The usual chaos of commerce and conversation continued, but underneath it ran a current of unease, like the distant rumble of approaching storm clouds. Then he saw him, a figure that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Tall and imposing, the stranger moved through the crowd with unnatural grace, his midnight blue robes swirling around him like living shadows. His face, partially hidden beneath an elaborately embroidered hood, bore the sharp features of a man who had seen too much of the world's secrets. Abu, usually bold to the point of recklessness, pressed himself against Aladdin's neck with a small whimper. Around the marketplace, other animals showed similar signs of distress, birds fell silent, dogs slunk away with tails tucked, and even the usually imperturbable cats disappeared into shadows. Who is he? Aladdin whispered to himself, unable to tear his gaze away from the mysterious figure. As if in response to his question, the stranger's head turned sharply, and eyes that seemed to hold the depth of centuries fixed directly upon him. Aladdin. The voice carried across the marketplace like a whisper of ancient parchment, somehow clearly audible despite the market's din. At last, I have found you. The crowd parted unconsciously as the stranger approached, creating an island of silence in the sea of market noise. Aladdin found himself rooted to the spot, his usual quick instincts for escape frozen by those penetrating eyes. How do you know my name? Aladdin managed to ask, his voice steadier than he felt. The stranger's thin lips curved into what might have been a smile. I knew your father, child, and your grandfather before him. I have watched your family line for generations, waiting for the one who would fulfill the prophecy. My father? Aladdin's heart jumped. But I never knew him. He died before I was born. Is that what you were told? The stranger's voice held a note of amusement. Your father, Malik al-Rashid, was a great man, a seeker of ancient knowledge and powerful secrets. And now, after all these years of searching, I find his son living as a common street thief. Aladdin bristled at the description, but couldn't deny its essential truth. Who are you? I am Jafar, the stranger replied, lowering his hood to reveal a face that seemed somehow both ancient and ageless. And I have come to offer you your birthright, a chance to claim the legacy your father left behind. As Jafar spoke these words, a hot wind swept through the marketplace, carrying with it the scent of desert sand and ancient stone. Awnings flapped, goods scattered, and for a moment Aladdin could have sworn he heard distant voices calling his name. What legacy? Aladdin asked, even as a part of him whispered that this moment would change everything. Jafar's eyes gleamed with an inner fire. Come with me, child of Malik, and I will show you wonders that have been hidden since the world was young. I will show you the truth of who you are and what you were born to become. Secrets of the Sands. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Agrabah as Aladdin followed Jafar through the winding streets, moving steadily away from the familiar chaos of the marketplace. Abu clung nervously to his shoulder, occasionally tugging at his ear as if urging him to turn back. But something stronger than curiosity pulled Aladdin forward, a hunger for answers about his father, about his true identity, about the destiny that seemed to whisper in the hot desert wind. Your father, Jafar spoke as they walked, his voice carrying the weight of hidden knowledge, was not merely a seeker of knowledge. He was a guardian of ancient secrets, chosen by powers older than time itself. But before he could fulfill his destiny, he disappeared into the desert, leaving behind a legacy that only his true heir can claim. They passed through the city gates, leaving behind the protective shadows of the walls. The desert stretched before them like an ocean of gold, endless waves of sand rolling toward the horizon. The heat hit Aladdin like a physical force, but Jafar seemed untouched by it, his dark robes somehow repelling both sun and sand. Tell me more about him, Aladdin urged, his throat tight with emotion. What was he like? What happened to him? Jafar paused, turning to face Aladdin with an expression that might have been sympathy or something else entirely. Malik was a man of vision and courage. He believed that within the desert lay secrets that could transform the world. But more importantly, he understood that power without wisdom is more dangerous than any weapon. As they walked deeper into the desert, Jafar began to speak of ancient prophecies, of a cave that appeared only to those deemed worthy, of treasures beyond imagination. But it was not gold or jewels that captured Aladdin's attention. It was the way Jafar spoke of his father, of a man who had apparently been so much more than the absent parent Aladdin had imagined. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon when Jafar finally stopped. They stood before a massive dune that seemed to pulse with an inner light, the sand shifting in patterns that defied the wind. Watch closely, Jafar commanded, raising his staff. The jewel at its head began to glow with an eerie red light, and he spoke words in a language that made Aladdin's ears ring and Abu whimper in distress. The sand before them began to move, not like ordinary dunes shifted by the wind, but with purpose and direction. It swirled and twisted, revealing something massive beneath, a great stone head in the shape of a tiger, its eyes glowing with the same supernatural light as Jafar's staff. Behold, Jafar's voice resonated with triumph, the guardian of the Cave of Wonders. For centuries, it has waited for one who is worthy, the diamond in the rough. Your father believed you would be that one, Aladdin. Now is the time to prove him right. The tiger's head spoke, its voice like thunder rolling across the desert. Who disturbs my slumber? Jafar nudged Aladdin forward. Speak your name, boy. Claim your destiny. Aladdin swallowed hard, gathering his courage. I am Aladdin, son of Malik al-Rashid. The giant stone eyes studied him for what felt like an eternity. Then the tiger's mouth opened wide, revealing a staircase descending into golden light. Enter, the guardian commanded, but know this, touch nothing but the lamp. All else is forbidden upon pain of death. The lamp? Aladdin turned to Jafar questioningly. A simple oil lamp, ancient and unremarkable to look upon, Jafar explained, his eyes gleaming with an intensity that made Aladdin uneasy. But within it lies the key to everything your father sought. Bring it to me, and I will show you truths that will change your life forever. Aladdin stood at the threshold of the cave, his heart pounding. Abu clutched his shoulder tightly, chittering nervously. The golden light from below seemed to call to him, promising answers to questions he hadn't even known to ask. Remember, Jafar's voice came from behind him, touch nothing but the lamp. The cave's treasures are tempting, but they are merely tests. The lamp is your true purpose. Taking a deep breath, Aladdin began his descent into the Cave of Wonders. Each step took him deeper into a realm of magic and mystery, where the line between reality and dreams began to blur. The stairs seemed to go on forever, spiraling down into the heart of the earth itself. Finally, he emerged into a chamber that stole his breath away. Mountains of gold coins stretched as far as they could see. Precious gems the size of melons cast rainbow light across walls encrusted with jewelry and ancient artifacts. Statues of pure gold stood guard over chests overflowing with pearls and diamonds. Abu's eyes grew wide with wonder, and Aladdin had to grab him quickly before he could leap toward the nearest pile of treasure. Remember what the guardian said, he whispered to his friend. We touch nothing but the lamp. The chamber seemed to go on forever, each new section revealing treasures more magnificent than the last. But something pulled Aladdin forward, past all the riches, toward a distant archway that glowed with a different kind of light. He passed through chamber after chamber, each filled with different kinds of marvels, rooms of magical weapons, halls of enchanted carpets that rippled in an unseen wind, galleries of mirrors that showed impossible reflections. Yet still he pressed on, following that mysterious pull. Finally, he entered a vast circular chamber, dark except for a single beam of light that fell from high above. And there, on a stone pedestal in the center of that light, sat a simple brass lamp, unmarked and unremarkable. This? Aladdin whispered to himself. This is what we came all this way for? Yet as he approached the pedestal, he could feel power radiating from the lamp like heat from a furnace. The air around it seemed to shimmer with possibility, and somewhere in the distance, he thought he heard the echo of laughter. The price of power. Aladdin stood before the pedestal, studying the lamp that seemed so ordinary yet radiated such power. The chamber around him was silent save for the soft patting of Abu's feet as the monkey circled nervously, keeping close to Aladdin's legs. As Aladdin reached for the lamp, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. His fingers hovered inches from the ancient brass, feeling the warmth that radiated from its surface. Even Abu had fallen completely silent, his small dark eyes fixed on the mysterious object. "What secrets do you hold?" Aladdin whispered to the lamp. His voice echoed strangely in the chamber, as if the very walls were listening. With careful reverence, he lifted the lamp from its pedestal. It was surprisingly warm to the touch, like a living thing that had been sleeping in the sun. The moment the lamp left its resting place, a low rumble began deep within the cave. At first, it was barely noticeable, more a feeling than a sound. But it grew quickly, rising to a thunderous roar that shook loose cascades of dust from the ancient ceiling. "Run!" The word boomed through the chamber in the same voice as the cave's guardian. "You have awakened the cave's guardian. Flee or be entombed for eternity." Aladdin didn't need to be told twice. With the lamp tucked securely in his vest and Abu clinging to his shoulder, he sprinted back the way they had come. The rumbling grew louder, and behind him he could hear the crash of falling stones. The magnificent chambers he had passed through were transforming into death traps. Gold coins melted into pools of liquid fire, precious gems exploded like shrapnel, and the very floor began to crack and split beneath his feet. The heat was overwhelming, and the air filled with choking dust. "This way," he shouted to Abu, leaping across a widening chasm. The monkey squealed in terror as a column crashed down inches behind them. Aladdin's years of running across Agrabah's rooftops served him well now. Each jump, roll, and slide came instinctively as he navigated the collapsing cave. Through the chaos, he could see the distant stairs that led to the surface, but they were crumbling rapidly. He pushed himself harder, legs burning with effort, lungs screaming for clean air. The lamp bounced against his chest with each stride, still radiating that strange warmth. "Hurry, boy!" Jafar's voice echoed from above. "Give me the lamp! Quickly!" Aladdin could see the sorcerer's silhouette against the star-filled sky, reaching down into the cave's mouth. With one final desperate surge of energy, he leaped for the stairs, catching Jafar's outstretched hand just as the last step crumbled away beneath him. "The lamp!" Jafar demanded, his grip painfully tight on Aladdin's wrist. "Give it to me now." Something in the sorcerer's voice, a note of desperate greed, made Aladdin hesitate. "Pull me up first," he called back, trying to get a better grip on the smooth stone with his free hand. Jafar's eyes narrowed, glowing with an inner fire that matched his staff's crimson light. "Foolish boy," he snarled, his facade of kindness falling away like a discarded cloak. "The lamp is all that matters." With his free hand, Jafar reached down, not to help Aladdin, but to snatch at the lamp protruding from his vest. In that moment of divided attention, his grip on Aladdin's wrist loosened slightly. Abu, seeing his friend's peril, launched himself at Jafar's face, chittering furiously. The sorcerer recoiled, releasing Aladdin's wrist completely. Time seemed to slow as Aladdin felt himself falling backward into the collapsing cave, Abu's terrified screech mixing with Jafar's howl of rage. The last thing Aladdin saw before darkness took him was the cave's mighty mouth closing forever, sealing him away from the world above. Then there was only blackness, the sensation of falling, and finally silence. Darkness and light. Consciousness returned slowly, like waves lapping at the shores of Aladdin's mind. The first thing he became aware of was pain, a dull ache that seemed to pervade every inch of his body. The second was the absolute darkness that surrounded him, thick enough to feel like a physical presence. "Abu," he called softly, his voice hoarse. A familiar chittering responded immediately, followed by the sensation of small hands patting his face anxiously. "I'm all right, friend," he assured the monkey, reaching up to scratch behind Abu's ears. "Though I'm not sure how long that will last." Slowly, carefully, Aladdin sat up. The darkness was complete. He couldn't even see his hand in front of his face. The air was stale but breathable, and the ground beneath him felt smooth, as if worn by countless years of flowing water. "At least we still have the lamp," he murmured, feeling its reassuring warmth through his vest. "The fat lot of good it does us now." He pulled it out, running his fingers over its surface. "A common oil lamp, this is what we nearly died for? This is what my father—" His words trailed off as his fingers found something unusual, a series of raised marks on the lamp's surface. As he rubbed at them, trying to make out the pattern in the darkness, something extraordinary happened. The lamp began to vibrate in his hands, its warmth increasing rapidly. A soft blue glow emerged from its spout, growing brighter and brighter until Aladdin had to shield his eyes. The light coalesced into a spiral of shimmering smoke that rose toward the unseen ceiling, carrying with it the scent of exotic spices and summer lightning. The smoke began to take shape, growing and expanding until it towered over Aladdin. Then, with a sound like distant thunder, it solidified into a being unlike anything Aladdin had ever seen or imagined. The figure was enormous, with skin the color of a summer sky and a lower body that trailed off into a wispy tail of smoke. Golden bands adorned its wrists, and a perfectly trimmed beard graced its chin. But most striking were its eyes, ancient, wise, and filled with a mixture of power and mischief. "Aha!" The being stretched dramatically, its voice booming through the cave. 10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck." It spun its head around completely, causing Abu to hide behind Aladdin's legs. Then, noticing their stunned expressions, the being's face split into a warm grin. "But seriously, folks," it continued in a more conversational tone, shrinking down to a merely impressive size, "it's good to be back. You can call me Genie, everyone does. And you must be, let me see." He produced a scroll of glowing text from thin air. "Ah, yes. Aladdin, son of Malik, the diamond in the rough himself. I've been expecting you, though I must say your entrance could use some work. Falling unconscious isn't exactly the traditional way to meet a cosmic entity of phenomenal power." Aladdin could only stare, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. You're a genie? A real genie? The genie's grin widened impossibly. Real as they come, kid. Complete with cosmic powers, semi-phenomenal living space, he gestured at the lamp and, of course, the standard 3-wish package. Though I should mention there are a few provisos, a couple of quid pro quos. 3 wishes, the genie said, conjuring a glowing scroll that unfurled through the air like a ribbon of starlight. But first, let's talk about what you can't wish for. Think of them as the natural laws of magic. He cleared his throat theatrically and began counting on his enormous blue fingers. Rule number 1, no wishing for more wishes. I know, that's always the first thing people try. He winked at Aladdin. Cosmic power has to have some limits, or we'd have chaos on our hands. Rule number 2, he continued, transforming into a sinister-looking sorcerer who bore an unsettling resemblance to Jafar, no making people fall in love. Trust me, those never end well. Romeo and Juliet? My cousin Gerald granted that wish. Terrible mess. And finally, the genie's voice grew solemn as he split into 3 identical versions of himself, each speaking in unison, no bringing back the dead. It's not pretty, it's not fun, and it goes against the very fabric of existence. The 3 genies merged back into one, who shuddered dramatically. You don't want to know what happened the last time someone tried that. Aladdin sat cross-legged on the cave floor, absently scratching Abu's head as he processed this information. The familiar gesture helped ground him in this increasingly surreal situation. But everything else is possible? The genie's face lit up, literally, as small fireworks exploded around his head. Now you're asking the right questions. Within those boundaries, your imagination is the only limit. He swooped down closer to Aladdin, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. And between you and me, kid, you've got something special. I can sense it, just like your father did. At the mention of his father, Aladdin leaned forward eagerly. You knew my father? Did he find you too? What happened to him? The genie's expression softened, and for a moment the mischievous sparkle in his eyes dimmed. Malik al-Rashid, now there was a man who understood the true power of wishes. He came seeking not gold or glory, but wisdom. He wished to understand the deepest mysteries of the universe. The genie gestured, and the air filled with swirling images of stars and ancient symbols. But knowledge, especially the cosmic kind, comes with a price. Your father's last wish. The genie paused, choosing his words carefully. Let's just say it opened doors that perhaps should have remained closed. He discovered something that changed everything, something about the nature of reality itself. Abu chittered nervously, pressing closer to Aladdin as shadows seemed to dance at the edges of the genie's light. What did he discover? Aladdin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. That, my young friend, is tied to your own destiny. The genie straightened up, his usual exuberance returning. But before we delve into cosmic mysteries, perhaps we should focus on getting out of this cave? Unless you're particularly fond of the underground ambience. Aladdin looked up at the seemingly endless darkness above them. Can't you just magic us out of here? You have phenomenal cosmic powers, right? The genie waggled a finger. But that would require a wish. I may be all-powerful, but I'm bound by the rules. Think of me as a cosmic vending machine, no coin, no candy. As if to emphasize the point, their surroundings rumbled ominously, small stones pattering down from the unseen ceiling. The cave's collapse had apparently not finished. They needed to act quickly. Aladdin stood, brushing dust from his clothes as he considered his options. 3 wishes. 3 chances to not only save their lives, but perhaps to uncover the truth about his father and the destiny that seemed to be unfolding before him. The weight of the decision pressed on him like a physical force. Well then, he said finally, straightening his shoulders, I guess I better make this first wish count. The genie cracked his knuckles, causing small bolts of lightning to dance between his fingers. Music to my ears, kid. Now, let's see what kind of magic we can make together. The first wish. Aladdin paced the small circle of blue light cast by the genie, his footsteps echoing in the vast darkness. Each distant rumble of shifting stone reminded him that time was running out. Abu watched anxiously from a nearby rock, his small hands clutched together. The first wish, Aladdin mused, running his fingers through his hair. It needs to be perfect. Not just to escape, but to understand. He turned to the genie, who was casually juggling balls of light. You said my father discovered something about the nature of reality. Something important enough to. Another rumble interrupted him, this one close enough to send cascades of dust raining down. The genie cleared his throat pointedly. Not to rush cosmic destiny or anything, kid, but this cave isn't getting any more stable. Right. Aladdin took a deep breath. Genie, I wish for us to escape this cave safely, but in a way that lets me follow my father's path, to see what he saw, to understand what he discovered. The genie's eyes widened, and for a moment his blue glow pulsed with an inner light. Oh, now that's an interesting wish. Not just an escape, but a journey of revelation. I like your style, kid. He cracked his knuckles, causing sparks to dance through the air. But I should warn you, your father's path wasn't exactly a stroll through the palace gardens. I'm ready, Aladdin said firmly, even as Abu tugged nervously at his pant leg. Then hold on to your fez, because this is going to be one cosmic ride. The genie grew to an enormous size, his form filling the chamber with swirling blue light. He raised his hands, and reality itself seemed to bend. The darkness around them began to change, not disappearing, but transforming. Pinpoints of light appeared in the void, swirling and connecting like countless stars forming constellations. Lines of golden energy traced patterns through the air, ancient symbols and formulae that seemed to pulse with their own inner life. What your father discovered, the genie's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere, was that reality is more like a story than a solid thing. And every story has its patterns, its rhythms, its hidden truths. The symbols around them began to move faster, weaving together into complex geometric shapes. Aladdin felt a strange sensation, as if his mind was expanding to encompass concepts just beyond his grasp. Abu cluttered in amazement as his fur began to glow with tiny points of light. The Cave of Wonders isn't just a cave, the genie continued, his form now a swirling vortex of energy. It's a nexus point, a place where the fabric of reality wears thin. Your father found others like it, scattered across the world like the dots of a giant connect the stars puzzle. The chamber filled with images, a mountain peak wreathed in eternal storm clouds, a forest where the trees grew in perfect geometric patterns, a desert oasis where the water flowed upward instead of down. In each location, Aladdin caught glimpses of a familiar figure, a man in scholar's robes, making notes in a journal that glowed with its own inner light. "That's him," Aladdin whispered. "That's my father." "Following his footsteps won't be easy," the genie warned, his voice gentler now. "Each revelation comes with a price, each truth with a test. Are you sure this is what you want?" Another rumble shook the cave, larger than before. Chunks of ceiling began to fall around them, but they passed through the glowing patterns without disturbing them. Aladdin squared his shoulders. "I'm sure. Show me the way." "Then hang on tight." The genie clapped his hands together with a sound like thunder. The patterns of light began to spin faster and faster, weaving themselves into a tunnel of pure energy. Your father's first step was to understand that up and down, near and far, are all just stories we tell ourselves about reality. With those words, the tunnel of light engulfed them. Aladdin felt a sensation of movement in all directions at once, as if reality itself was being rewritten around them. Abu's terrified shriek merged with the sound of rushing wind and distant chimes. When the light faded, they were standing on a mountain peak under a sky filled with impossible constellations. The air shimmered with the same kind of energy they'd seen in the cave, and in the distance, more patterns of light danced between earth and sky. "Welcome," the genie said, returning to his more normal size, but maintaining an unusually serious expression, to the first page of your father's story. The real question is..." He turned to Aladdin with a raised eyebrow. "Are you ready to write your own?" Aladdin looked out over the transformed landscape, where reality itself seemed to ripple like pages in a cosmic book. In his vest, the lamp pulsed warmly, as if responding to the energies around them. Abu, still glowing faintly, climbed to his shoulder and chittered questioningly. "I've been ready my whole life," Aladdin said softly. "I just didn't know what I was waiting for." The genie smiled, a genuine expression that held both pride and concern. "Then let the lesson begin. But remember, kid, not all stories have happy endings. Sometimes the most important part is how you handle the plot twists." As if in response to his words, the mountain beneath their feet began to shift, and the first test of Aladdin's new destiny began to unfold. Patterns in the sky. The mountain peak swayed like a ship at sea, forcing Aladdin to widen his stance to maintain balance. The stars above them, if they were truly stars, began to move in intricate patterns, forming shapes that seemed to carry meaning just beyond his understanding. Your father, the genie explained, casually floating cross-legged in the air, discovered that the universe is written in a language older than time. These patterns? He gestured at the dancing lights above. They're like letters in a cosmic alphabet. Abu, still perched on Aladdin's shoulder, reached up as if trying to catch the falling starlight. Each spark that touched his fur left tiny glowing symbols that faded slowly. But how do I read them? Aladdin asked, his eyes tracking the movement of light and shadow. How did my father learn to understand? The genie's expression turned playful. The same way you learn to read normal writing, one letter at a time. He snapped his fingers, and one of the patterns froze in mid-motion. Look at this one. What does it remind you of? Aladdin studied the glowing lines. At first, they seemed random, but as he watched, he began to notice something familiar. It looks like the way water moves when it hits a rock in the stream. The way it splits and comes back together. Exactly. The genie beamed. The language of reality isn't about words, it's about patterns. Your father spent years learning to read them, but you... He peered at Aladdin thoughtfully. You seem to have inherited his gift for it. The frozen pattern began to pulse, and suddenly Aladdin could feel what it meant. Not in words, but in pure understanding, the way water flows, the way wind moves, the eternal dance of separation and reunion. It was beautiful and overwhelming at the same time. But before he could process this new sensation, the mountain shuddered again. The pattern above them shattered like glass, its pieces falling around them in a shower of light. Each shard showed a different reflection, some of the past, some of possible futures, some of things that defied description. And now, the genie announced, his voice carrying an edge of excitement and concern, comes your first real test. Because understanding the pattern is only the beginning. The true challenge is learning to dance with it. Dancing with reality. The shards of starlight continued to fall, each one carrying fragments of vision and meaning. Aladdin found himself moving instinctively, weaving between them as if engaged in an intricate dance. Abu clung tightly to his shoulder, his small body glowing brighter with each near miss. That's it, the genie encouraged, his form shifting and swirling with excitement. The patterns aren't just for reading, they're for participating. Reality isn't a story you just watch, it's one you help write. As Aladdin moved, he began to notice how each step affected the falling lights. Where his feet touched the ground, ripples of energy spread outward, influencing the paths of the falling shards. It was like being part of an enormous, cosmic game of chess, where every move changed the entire board. My father's journal, he called out, ducking under a particularly large fragment that showed a desert storm frozen in mid-swirl. The one I saw in the visions, where is it now? The genie twisted his beard thoughtfully, causing small sparks to cascade from it. Ah, now that's an interesting question. The journal exists in multiple places at once, another one of reality's little jokes. Your father learned to write in the spaces between spaces, you might say. Another tremor shook the mountain, but this time Aladdin noticed something different. The vibrations weren't random, they followed a pattern, like music without sound. He closed his eyes, feeling the rhythm through his feet. The mountain, he said slowly, opening his eyes. It's trying to tell us something, isn't it? Give the kid a prize. The genie clapped his hands, producing a shower of congratulatory fireworks that merged with the falling starlight. Everything has its own pattern, its own story. The trick is learning to read them all at once, like your father did. Aladdin took a deep breath, trying to focus on everything at once, the mountain's rhythm beneath his feet, the patterns in the falling light, the subtle movements of the air around them. Gradually, they began to merge in his mind, forming a single, complex dance. I think, he said carefully, his body moving in harmony with the patterns, I think I understand what he was trying to do. He wasn't just studying the patterns, he was looking for a way to. Before he could finish the thought, one of the larger light shards exploded near them, releasing a burst of pure energy. The blast would have knocked Aladdin off his feet if he hadn't been moving with the mountain's rhythm. Instead, he found himself spinning through the aftershock, using its force to propel him in a new direction. Now that, the genie said appreciatively, was some quality reality dancing. But watch out, the finale's coming up. The remaining shards of light began to pulse in unison, their glow intensifying. The mountain's rhythm quickened, and the sky above seemed to fold in on itself, creating patterns within patterns within patterns. Abu chittered urgently, pointing at something forming in the center of the aerial display. A book was taking shape, its pages made of pure light, its cover adorned with symbols that shifted and changed as they watched. Your father's journal, the genie confirmed. Or at least one version of it. But I should warn you, reaching for it has consequences. Aladdin studied the floating book, noting how the patterns of falling light bent around it, creating a complex web of energy. What kind of consequences? The genie's expression turned serious. Let's just say the last person who tried to read it, who wasn't your father, ended up spending 1,000 years trying to count to infinity. Time gets a bit flexible around objects of power like that. Another explosion of light rocked the mountain. The journal flickered, its form becoming less stable. Aladdin realized he would have to decide quickly, reach for the book and risk whatever consequences might come, or let this chance to understand his father's work slip away. Abu tugged at his ear, pointing frantically at the genie, then at the lamp still tucked in Aladdin's vest. The monkey's meaning was clear. They still had 2 wishes left. They could find another way. But something in Aladdin's heart told him this was the moment. This was what all those years of surviving on the streets, of learning to read patterns in crowds and marketplaces, had prepared him for. His father had left this trail for a reason. Sometimes, he said, remembering the genie's earlier words, the most important part is how you handle the plot twists. With that, he began to move, letting the mountain's rhythm guide his steps, feeling the push and pull of the light patterns around him. The journal pulsed brighter as he approached, its pages fluttering in a wind that seemed to blow from everywhere and nowhere. The genie watched with an unreadable expression, his usual jovial manner replaced by something more ancient and knowing. "Once you touch that book," he warned, "there's no going back. You'll see what your father saw, all of it." Aladdin paused, his hand outstretched toward the glowing tome. "Was it worth it?" he asked quietly. What he discovered, was it worth what it cost him? The genie's expression softened. "That, my young friend, is the question every seeker of truth must answer for themselves. Your father thought so. But his story isn't yours unless you choose to make it so." Another tremor shook the mountain. The journal's glow pulsed like a heartbeat, calling to him. Aladdin took one last deep breath, felt the rhythm of reality flowing through him, and made his choice. The pages of time. The moment Aladdin's fingers touched the journal, the world exploded into light. Colors he had no names for cascaded through his vision as reality seemed to fold in on itself. Abu's startled cry stretched into an impossible length, becoming musical notes in a cosmic symphony. Then everything stopped. He found himself standing in a space that wasn't a space, a realm where thoughts took physical form and memories hung in the air like curtains of light. The journal in his hands pulsed with a gentle warmth, its pages now clearly visible. "Well," the genie's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, "you've done it now. Welcome to what your father called the intersection, the place where all stories meet." Aladdin looked around in wonder. Streams of events flowed past like rivers of light, some he recognized from his own life, others completely alien. In one, he saw himself as a child, learning to navigate Agrabah's winding streets. In another, he glimpsed possibilities that had never come to pass, himself as a scholar, as a soldier, as a king. "These are all real?" he asked, his voice echoing strangely in the non-space. The genie materialized beside him, his blue form somehow both more and less solid than before. "Real is a complicated word in here. Let's say they're all equally true, just not equally actualized." Abu, still perched on Aladdin's shoulder, reached out to touch one of the passing streams. His paw passed through it, causing ripples that sent cascades of change through the connected events. "Careful there." The genie gently pulled Abu back. "The butterfly effect is no joke in here. One small change can turn a prince into a pauper or a pauper into a prince." He paused thoughtfully. "Though sometimes that happens anyway." Aladdin opened the journal, and his father's handwriting flowed across the pages like living ink. The words weren't just written, they moved, shifted, rearranged themselves as he watched. Each page seemed to contain infinite pages within it, folding into dimensions he could barely comprehend. He found this place, Aladdin whispered, watching his father's discoveries unfold before him. He learned to read the patterns, and they led him here. But why? What was he looking for? The genie's expression grew serious. That's the real question, isn't it? Your father discovered something here, something that changed everything. But before I tell you what it was, he raised an eyebrow. Are you sure you want to know? Some truths can't be unknown once they're learned. Aladdin looked down at the journal, where diagrams of impossible geometry danced across the pages. In one corner, he saw a familiar symbol, the same one that had been carved into the Cave of Wonders entrance. "Show me," he said firmly. The genie nodded solemnly and waved his hand. The streams of events around them parted like curtains, revealing a new scene, his father, older than in the previous visions, standing in this very space. He was writing in the journal, his face illuminated by the glow of revelation. "Watch carefully," the genie instructed. This is the moment everything changed. The scene began to play out before them. Malik al-Rashid's voice echoed through the intersection, each word carrying the weight of profound discovery. The patterns aren't just describing reality, his father's voice rang out, they're holding it together. The stories we tell, the choices we make, they're not just recording what happens. They're weaving the fabric of existence itself. And if one understands the patterns deeply enough, his father's hand trembled as he wrote the final words in the journal. Reality itself can be rewritten. The scene froze, hanging in the air like a painting made of light. Aladdin felt a chill run down his spine as the implications of his father's words sank in. He found a way to change the story, Aladdin said slowly. Not just to read the patterns, but to rewrite them? The genie nodded grimly. Now you understand why Jafar wanted the lamp so badly. Your father's discovery wasn't just about understanding reality, it was about gaining the power to reshape it. But power like that comes with a price, Aladdin finished. He looked down at the journal again, where new words were forming on the pages. His father's final entry. I have seen the truth beneath all truths, the story beneath all stories. But knowledge is not wisdom, and power is not purpose. To my son, if you are reading this, the real question is not whether the story can be changed, but whether it should be. Choose wisely, for every new page comes at the cost of one that came before. The words faded away, leaving Aladdin holding a book that suddenly felt heavier than all the gold in the Cave of Wonders. Abu whimpered softly, sensing his friend's turmoil. So, the genie said quietly, what happens next in your story, kid? Before Aladdin could answer, a disturbance rippled through the intersection. The streams of events began to twist and churn, and a familiar dark presence began to seep into the space between spaces. Well, came a silky voice that made Aladdin's blood run cold. How kind of you to do all the hard work for me. Jafar had found them. And in this place where reality itself was uncertain, the real battle was about to begin. The darkness of Jafar's presence seeped through the intersection like ink in water, distorting the streams of light and possibility around them. His form coalesced from the shadows, more powerful and terrible in this place where reality itself was malleable. "Did you really think," Jafar's voice echoed with unnatural resonance, "that I wouldn't find my way here? I've spent decades studying the patterns, following your father's trail." His staff pulsed with crimson energy that seemed to consume the light around it. "Though I must admit, having you clear the path made things considerably easier." Aladdin clutched the journal tighter, feeling its warmth pulse in response to his touch. Abu bristled on his shoulder, his small form still trailing starlight. The genie moved to stand between them and Jafar, his usual jovial demeanor replaced by something ancient and powerful. "Careful, Jafar," the genie warned, his voice carrying harmonics that made the very fabric of the intersection vibrate. "You're playing with forces you don't fully understand." Jafar's laugh was like breaking glass. "Oh, but I do understand. More than you know." He raised his staff, and the shadows around him began to twist into familiar shapes, alternate versions of himself from different streams of possibility, each one radiating dark power. "Your father wasn't the only one who learned to read between the lines of reality, boy." Aladdin looked down at the journal in his hands, where new words were forming on the pages. The power to rewrite reality is not in the patterns themselves, but in understanding why they must remain in balance. "The lamp," Jafar demanded, extending a hand. "Give it to me, along with the journal, and I might let you leave this place with your sanity intact." Aladdin felt the weight of the lamp in his vest, still warm against his chest. 2 wishes remained, 2 chances to change the story. But his father's words echoed in his mind. The real question is not whether the story can be changed, but whether it should be. The streams of possibility swirled around them, showing glimpses of countless potential futures. In one, he saw Agrabah in ruins. In another, a golden age of wisdom and prosperity. In yet another, the world itself unraveling as the patterns that held it together were torn apart. It was time to make a choice, not just about power, but about responsibility. About the kind of story he wanted to be part of writing. The truth within the lamp. After the initial shock of summoning the genie, Aladdin began to understand the depth of the magic he held in his hands. The genie's playful demeanor did little to mask the immense power radiating from his every gesture, a power contained by the ancient laws that bound him to the lamp. "So, Aladdin," the genie grinned, "you've got 3 wishes. Big or small, you name it, and I can make it happen." Aladdin held the lamp tightly, feeling its warmth pulse in his hand as though alive. He thought of the wishes that could transform his life, endless riches, a palace of his own, the love of Princess Jasmine. But something deeper kept him from speaking his desires out loud. His father's mysterious past and his connection to the Cave of Wonders haunted him as if something crucial lay hidden just beneath his reach. "What if my first wish isn't for riches or power?" Aladdin said slowly, meeting the genie's curious gaze. What if it's for something more meaningful? The genie arched a brow, intrigued. Well, I'm all ears. Lay it on me, kid. A wish for wisdom. Aladdin took a deep breath, glancing down at the lamp. Genie, I wish for the wisdom to understand the true purpose of my father's legacy. I want to know why he sought the Cave of Wonders and why he left this path for me to follow. The genie paused, his usually bright smile softening. For the first time, he looked at Aladdin with a hint of solemnity. Well now, that's quite a wish, he said, his voice filled with a reverence that Aladdin hadn't heard before. With a flourish of his hands, the genie conjured a shimmering vision that surrounded Aladdin as if the world itself had shifted into another time. The air grew dense with memories that weren't his own. Aladdin saw his father, Malik, a man of strong will and endless curiosity, venturing through the desert, driven by a vision of the patterns hidden within the world. Malik had been a seeker of truth, a man convinced that life's mysteries could be understood if one only dared to ask the right questions. But his quest was filled with challenges, sacrifices that Aladdin felt deeply, as if experiencing them himself. As the vision faded, the genie looked at Aladdin with a knowing smile. Now you see, wisdom isn't always about answers, Aladdin. Sometimes it's about understanding the journey itself. Aladdin nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of his father's unfulfilled mission. A test of character. Armed with this new knowledge, Aladdin knew he had to approach his wishes differently. He couldn't simply wish for the end result, he had to understand the purpose behind every step. In that moment of realization, the world around them trembled, and a familiar darkness swept through the air. Jafar, his figure cloaked in ominous shadows, appeared before them, his gaze fixed on the lamp in Aladdin's hand. Aladdin, Jafar sneered, his voice filled with barely concealed fury. You've come far, but your journey ends here. That lamp and the power it holds belongs to me. Jafar raised his staff, and Aladdin felt the air crackle with dark energy. He instinctively took a step back, but the genie stepped forward, a protective fire blazing in his eyes. Not so fast, Jafar, the genie said with a booming voice. You've got no hold over this lamp as long as Aladdin's my master. Aladdin knew he had to act quickly. If he used his next wish, he could escape Jafar's trap, but he would lose one of his precious wishes. And so he made a decision, one that echoed the wisdom his father sought. Genie, I wish to be shown a way to defeat Jafar, but without harming him, Aladdin said, his voice steady. With a nod, the genie clapped his hands, and a faint golden light enveloped them. Smart choice, Al, he murmured approvingly. Looks like you've learned the value of balance. Suddenly, Aladdin saw a vision of the Cave of Wonders, its entrance sealed, but something gleamed in the darkness, a relic hidden within the cave, a source of light that could bind Jafar's powers and restore peace. Return to the cave. Without a moment's hesitation, Aladdin and the genie returned to the cave. Guided by the genie's magic, they ventured deeper than before, into chambers filled with ancient symbols and patterns that seemed to whisper secrets of the universe. As they reached the hidden relic, Aladdin felt a surge of energy, a sense of completion, as if this object had been waiting for him all along. Jafar's shadow appeared once more, but this time Aladdin was prepared. Holding the relic high, he felt its light flood the cavern, casting away the darkness and binding Jafar in its glow. "Your power is no match for balance," Aladdin said, his voice calm and firm. "You sought the lamp for greed, but it was never yours to command." In a final burst of light, Jafar's form faded, his ambition undone by the very cave he had sought to conquer. The Keeper of Wisdom. Aladdin emerged from the Cave of Wonders a changed man, his understanding deepened and his purpose clear. He returned to Agrabah not as a prince, but as a man rich in wisdom, carrying his father's legacy forward with dignity. And as he released the genie with his final wish, he knew that the true treasures were not in gold or power, but in the understanding and strength he had gained through his journey. And thus, the story of Aladdin and the Cave of Wonders lived on, not as a tale of riches, but as a testament to the courage and wisdom that reside within us all.